Because the only issue I ever owned was the issue that you appeared in, and I bought it for that. And when I started working on the 8-pager, my wife handed me the collection, and I got to see all the stories. And I can see what you mean, because I'm thumbing through it going, oh my goodness gracious, there's some...
And there were people like Golden and Mignola who originally were going to do something and then did. But,
yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a roster.
And I don't know how black and white to go with it. You know, like I'm kind of like, do I want to do it in tones? Do I want to do it in just like harsh film noir, black and white, and nothing in between?
But you can do that. You got a great sense of black and white and how to use them as absolutes without. I cheated a little bit on mine. I had some Zipatone.
Yeah, it's a Zipatone, but that gave it like a cool, like old school feel.
Yeah, those
you know?
big dots.
And then, you know, it's like nowadays you don't need those because you can just put those sort of K-tones in, you know, with a computer. But I love when people still go, I'm going to bring out the Do a Shade paper or the Zipatone, and it's going to make stick it down, you know.
Yeah.
So
and you're writing the Batman black and white story as well.
Yeah, they actually asked me. They called me up and said, "Hey, would you write this Batman black and white story?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." I said, "Pause. Can I draw it?" And they were like, "Oh." And this is Mark Chiarello, who I've worked with Mark for like 14 years. All of my covers at DC are for Mark. And he says, "Do you want to draw it?" And I went, "I want to do interiors again. Please let me draw it." And but it's good. It's helping me remember how to do the insides.
What's it for?
I don't know.
Published?
I don't know where it's going to be published. You know, especially now with the big announcements that they've made. That DC is going to be doing same-day digital comics as they hit the stands. I'm not really sure it's where it's going to appear. Probably one of those things where you draw it and they stick it in a drawer, and then 20 years from now it ends up being published somewhere. But
I don't think that'll happen with you. But yeah, hopefully it'll show up.
I hope not. I was actually up at DC one day a couple of years ago when they were cleaning out the inventory drawer, and it was a drawer of broken dreams and sadness, because it's like they're pulling out these things and they're going, oh look, here's this cover that some kid did and we couldn't use it because it's just, you know, it's the world's worst Supergirl, you know. I thought it was Dead Man, you know. It's like these terrible art drawings. But then they pulled out this the story that the Mike Mignola Clayface story. And you inked that, right?
Right.
And they pulled that out. And I was like, why aren't you printing this somewhere? And
it made no sense. Yeah, it sat on the shelf for a long time. It sat on the shelf for years, originally, uninked, because it was for Secret Origins.
Secret Origin of Clayface 2.
And, what's his name? Mark Waid assigned it to Steve Purcell.
Steve Purcell, Sam and Max, Freelance Police.
And he thought this would be great, because Steve will make it funny, because it's a Secret Origin of Clayface, a guy that just looks like a big pile of mud. You know?
But you're being kind.
But and Steve actually took some of the original dialogue from the '40s version of Clayface and
it was insane,
verbatim, and it was hysterical. It was funny because the style of speech was so odd.
Yeah. But did it ever see print, or is it still?
Yes, it finally saw print, but it was buried in the back of some secret files or something like that. They couldn't have buried it better than they did.
Because it literally was the funniest thing I'd ever read. And the reason why it did not get originally finished was because it was deemed too funny. Correct?
Yeah.
That's what I was told when I was...
Another editor thought, at one point some bad guys called Batman and Robin a couple of costumed pansies.
Yeah.
And said, we can't have that. We can't have Batman and Robin referred to as costume pansies. We can't do that.
But it's you know, why can't the crooks insult them? You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, but
it's sort of like when they didn't want to have Nazis in the comics.
But it was
like, why? Because they're too bad? Too evil? I get it.
I cannot impart to you, this is the funniest thing I've ever read. Steve Purcell is insane, and the sort of hiring straight guys like Mike Mignola and Kevin Nowlan to do the story made it even funnier.
Exactly. Because Mike drew it in his regular style. It's not a cartoony.
No, not a cartoony style. He drew
Mike,
it.
it's just Mike in the 80s.
And it was this Cosmic Odyssey style.
Right.
That's what I like to call it.
Before hell.
But it's like, you know, Clayface, you know, is a crook going around just waiting for his freak nuclear accident to become like a giant turd guy. And, but his dialogue is like, man, I need loot and plenty of it. Right? And I was like going,
that was from the original comic.
yeah.
Something like that. And they complimented Steve, and he said, "I just took that from the old comic. That's the way they talk."
It's there's you know Robin coming down to the Batcave saying you know because of all these mysterious crimes where they can't find the crook and all there is a trace of mud, and Robin says that he's just gotten done talking to the Gotham City Department of Holes and Noise. And they don't know who's down in the sewers. And Robin, but like Robin asks Batman, like, you know, Clayface, you know, is it a man or is it a monster? And Batman logically says, obviously a man, chum. You know, why would a monster need money? What would it buy? That's one panel of this story. But that's how Batman thinks. He's the world's greatest detective. Of course Clayface is a man, because a monster does not need cash. And I've got a dog-eared photocopy of the pencils, and somebody at DC snuck them to me years ago. It was contraband. It was literally, you know, wrapped in like cocaine and crack. You know, so you know, allay suspicion. And I was like, this is the greatest story ever. I got to find it now because I've never actually seen your inks. Did you color it?
No, I didn't. But I think Matt Hollingsworth is really nice to color. But it was killed after, and Mark Waid felt awful because you know, he's a new editor and he assigned this thing that got killed. So obviously all that work was going to just sit on the shelf for years. And yeah, you had to wait. It was at least 10 years later.
Over 10 years, yeah.
And someone revived it and asked me if I still wanted it. And actually, Mike, I think I was originally penciled in or inked in the credits for the inker, but no one even asked me to do it.
I remember you telling me that.
Assuming that I would be willing to do it.
Hey, if we write his name in ink in the credits, he has to draw it. You know, that's the law.
Yeah. But then it was funny because for so many years in between, Mike then, when it was going to be published, was going to ink it himself. And I think he even called and asked if I'd mind. I said, no one even asked me to ink it in the first place, so of course I don't mind. It's not my story. And Mike had it for I don't know how long. The artwork had been in Canada for a while. Someone had literally given away the originals to someone to do inking samples. Unfortunately, that inker never inked the pages. They remained untouched. Mike was going to ink it, and he looked at it for a while, and he said, I don't even know the guy who penciled this story. His style had changed so much that he had no idea what to do. So.
Well, I was there when they unearthed it, Indiana Jones-like, from its crypt of awesomeness. And they had a bunch of other great stories and a bunch of other great covers. Now, granted, there was garbage.
Right.
There was garbage protecting that story from Silverfish and Dust.
Right.
And they were sitting there like, we don't know what to do with these stories. And I said, why don't you do a book full of buried treasures, just like all these things. Just call it that and say, hey, kids, we found like a bunch of art under a rock, and and they were like, yeah, maybe okay. And I was like, come on, you know, it's like, wouldn't you love to sit there and find out like there's these treasures that DC or Marvel or any publisher has hidden that they've hired somebody to do, they've forgotten about, and then it's unearthed by 9 generations later by editors who don't even remember the assignments, going, what the heck is this? Well, we got to publish it.
Yeah, that's it's cool to imagine that. There was a story in the 70s back when DC was reprinting a lot of the Golden Age material as backups in their comics, and there was I can't think of the character, but it was penciled in the 40s, and then it had never been inked, never been published, and they dug it out and had Nowlan ink it in the 70s, and it was great because it was this odd combination. It was Dr. Midnight.
Okay.
And it was this odd combination of, you could tell it sort of looked like a 40s story, but then there was Zipatone and all this stuff from the 70s that, you know, it was really, really nice glossy inking style. It